Okay, Chapter 2 of the Magisterium. Also, exciting news, none of you care, but my cough is gone, so yay, that's fun. But anyway, second chapter, let's go. There were only about a half-dozen mages, but they seemed to fill the space with their presence. Cal wasn't sure what he thought they were going to look like. He knew his father was a mage, and he seemed pretty ordinary, if tweedy. He figured most other magicians would look much weirder, maybe pointy hats or robes with silver stars on them. He hoped that someone would be green-skinned. To his disappointment, they looked completely normal. There were 3 women and 3 men, each wearing loose-fitting, long-sleeve, belted black tunics over pants of the same material. There were leather and metal cuffs around their wrists, but Cal couldn't tell if there was anything special about those, or if they were just a fashion statement. The tallest of the mages, a big, wide-shouldered man with a hawkish nose and shaggy brown hair shot through with threads of silver, stepped forward and addressed the families in the bleachers. Welcome, aspirants, and welcome, families of aspirants, to the most significant afternoon in your child's life. Right, Cal thought. No pressure or anything. Do they all know they're here to try and get into magic school? He asked quietly. His father shook his head. The parents believe whatever they want to believe and hear whatever they want to hear. If they want their child to be a famous athlete, they believe he's getting into an exclusive training program. If they hope she'll be a brain surgeon, this is pre-med. If they want him to grow up to be wealthy, then they believe this is a sort of prep school where he'll hobnob with the rich and powerful. Fucking hobnob. Who writes the word hobnob? Northerners write the word hobnob. Damn. The mage went on, explaining how the afternoon... What the fuck? Damn bug. Hold up. Ha. That bitch. Okay. Book. No! Don't lose my page. Okay. Book time. Book. Ah. The mage went on, explaining how the afternoon was going to go, how long it would take. Some of you have traveled a great distance to give your child this opportunity, and we want to extend our gratitude. Cal could hear him, but he heard another voice, too, one that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. When Master North finishes speaking, all aspirants should rise and come to the front. The trial is about to begin. Did you hear that? Cal asked his dad, who nodded. Cal looked around at the faces all turned to the mages, some apprehensive, some smiling. What about the kids? The mage, Cal guessed he must be Master North, according to the disembodied voice, was finishing up his speech. Cal knew he should start down the bleachers since it was going to take him longer than it would take the others, but he wanted to find out the answer. Anyone with even a little power can hear Master Phineas, and most of the aspirants will have had some kind of magical occurrence before. Some have already guessed what they are, some already know for sure, and the rest are about to find out. There was a shuffling as kids got to their feet, making the metal stands shake. So that's the first test? Cal asked his father. Whether we hear Master Phineas? His dad barely seemed to register what he was saying. He looked distracted. I suppose, but the other tests will be much worse. Just remember what I said, and it will all be over soon. He caught Cal's wrist, startling him. He knew his dad cared about him, but he wasn't touchy-feeling most of the time. He gripped Cal's hand hard and released it fast. Now go. As Cal made his way down the bleachers, the other kids were being corralled into groups. One of the female magicians waved Cal toward a group at the end. All the other aspirants were whispering to one another, seeming nervous but full of anticipation. Cal saw Kylie Miles 2 groups over. He wondered if he should yell over to her that she wasn't really here for ballet tryouts. But she was grinning and chatting with some other aspirants, so he doubted she would have listened to him anyway. Ballet school tryouts, he thought grimly. That's how they get you. I am Master Milligros, the female mage who directed Cal was now saying as she herded her group expertly out the big room and down a long, blandly painted hallway. For this first test, you will all be together. Please follow behind me in orderly fashion. Cal, almost at the back, hurried a little bit to catch up. He knew that being late was probably an advantage if he wanted them to think that he didn't care about the tests or didn't know what he was doing, but he hated the stares he got when he lagged behind. In fact, he hurried ahead so quickly that he accidentally banged into the shoulder of a pretty girl with large, dark eyes. She shot him an annoyed look from underneath the even darker curtain of her hair. Sorry, Cal said automatically. We're all nervous, the girl said, which was funny because she didn't look nervous. She looked completely composed. Her eyebrows were perfectly arched. There wasn't a speck of dust on her caramel-colored sweater or her expensive-looking jeans. She wore a delicate filigree hand pendant around her throat that Cal recognized from antique store visits as a hand of Fatima? As a hand of Fatima. I think it's pronounced Fatima. I'm sorry if it's not. Why am I? The gold earrings in her ears looked like they had once belonged to a princess, if not a queen. Cal immediately felt self-conscious, as if he were covered in dirt. Hey, Tamara, a tall Asian boy with floppy, razor-cut black hair said, and the girl turned away from Cal. The boy had said something that Cal couldn't hear, sneering as he said it, and Cal worried it was about how Cal was a cripple who couldn't help lurching into people, like he was Frankenstein's monster. Resentment bubbled in his brain, especially since Tamara hadn't looked at him like she'd noticed his leg at all. She'd been annoyed with him like he was a regular kid. He reminded himself that as soon as he failed the exams, he'd never have to see any of these people again. Also, they were going to die underground. That thought kept him going down the endless series of halls and into a big white room where rows of desks were laid out in lines. It looked like every other room Cal had ever taken a standardized test in. I cannot talk today, I swear to God. It's messing every word up. The desks were plain and wooden, attached to rickety chairs. Each desk had a blue book labeled with a kid's name and a pen laid on top. There was a hubbub as everyone went from desk to desk, searching for his or her place card. Motherfucker. Cal found his in the third row and slid into the seat, behind a kid with pale, wavy hair and a soccer team jacket. He looked more like a jock than a candidate for mage school. The boy smiled at Cal as though he was genuinely happy to be seated near him. God, I love this guy. I love this one. I love him. Anyway, psych, love him. Cal didn't bother smiling back. He opened his blue book, glancing at the pages with questions and empty circles for A, B, C, D, or E. He'd been expecting the tests to be scary, but the only apparent danger was the danger of being bored to death. Please keep your books closed until the test has started, Master Milligros said from the front of the room. She was a tall, extremely young-looking master, who reminded Cal a little of his homeroom teacher. She had the same sense of awkward nervousness, as if she wasn't used to spending a lot of time around kids. Her hair was black and short, with a streak of pink in it. Cal closed his book and then looked around, realizing he'd been the only person to open it. He decided he wasn't going to tell his father how easy it had been to avoid fitting in. First of all, I want to welcome you all to the Iron Trial, Master Milligros went on, clearing her throat. Now that we're away from your guardians, we can explain in more detail what is going to happen today. Some of you will have received invitations to apply for music school, or a school that concentrates on astronomy or advanced mathematics or horseback riding. But as you may have supposed by now, you are actually here to be evaluated for acceptance into the magisterium. She raised her hands, and the walls seemed to fall away. In their place was rough-hewn stone. The kids remained at their desks, but the ground beneath them had changed to mica-flecked rock, with each sparkled like strewn glitter. Shimmering stalactites hung from the ceiling like icicles. The blond boy drew in his breath. All across the room, Cal could hear low exclamations of awe. It was as if they were inside the caves of the magisterium. So cool, said a pretty girl with white beads on the ends of her cornrowed braids. In that moment, despite everything his father had told Cal, he wanted to go to the magisterium. It no longer seemed dark or scary, but amazing. Like being an explorer or going to another planet. He thought of his father's words. The mages will tempt you with pretty illusions and elaborate lies. Don't be drawn in. Master Milligros went on, her voice gaining in confidence. Some of you are legacy students, with parents or other family members who have attended the magisterium. Others have been chosen because we believe you have the potential to become mages. But none of you are assured a place. Only the masters know what makes a perfect candidate. Cal stuck up his hand and, without waiting to be called on, asked, What if you don't want to go? Why wouldn't anyone want to go pony school? Wondered a boy with a mop of brown hair, seated diagonally from Cal. He was small and pale, with scrawny long legs and arms sticking out of a blue t-shirt with a faded picture of a horse on it. Master Milligros looked as if she was so annoyed. She'd forgotten to be nervous. Drew Wallace, she said. This is not pony school. You are being tested to see if you possess the qualities that will lead you to be chosen as an apprentice, and to accompany your teacher, called your master, to the magisterium. And if you possess sufficient magic, attendance is not optional. She glared at Cal. The trial is for your own safety. Those of you who are legacies know the dangers untrained mages pose to themselves and others. A murmur ran around the room. Several of the kids, Cal realized, were looking at Tamara. She was saying very straight in her chair, her eyes fixed ahead of her, her chin jutting out. He knew that look. It was the same look he got when people muttered about his leg, or his dead mom, or his weirdo father. It was the look of someone trying to pretend she didn't know she was being talked about. So what happens if you don't get into the magisterium? Asked the girl with the braids. Good question, Gwenda Manson. I read that wrong. Good question, Gwenda Manson, said Master Milligros encouragingly. To be a successful mage, you must possess 3 things. One is the intrinsic power of magic. That you all have to some degree. The second is the knowledge of how to use it. That we can give you. The third is control, and that must come from inside of you. Now, in your first year as untaught mages, You are reaching the apex of your power, and you have no learning and no control. If you seem to possess neither the aptitude for learning nor one for control, then you will not find a place at the magisterium. In that case, we will make sure that you and your families are permanently safe from magic or any danger of succumbing to the elements. Succumbing to the elements? What does that mean? Cal wondered. It sounded like other people were just as confused. Does that mean I failed a test? Someone asked. Wait, what does she mean? Another kid said. So this definitely isn't pony school? Drew asked again, wistfully. Master Milagros ignored all of this. The image of the cavern slowly faded away. They were in the same white room they'd always been in. The pens in front of you are special, she said, looking as if she remembered to be nervous again. Cal wondered how old she was. She seemed young, even younger because of the pink hair. But he guessed you had to be a pretty accomplished magician to be a master. If you don't use your pen, we won't be able to read your test. Shake it to activate the ink, and remember to show your work. You may begin. Cal opened the book again. He squinted at the first question. 1. A dragon and a wyvern set out at 2 p.m. from the same cavern, headed in the same direction. The average speed of the dragon is 30 miles per hour, slower than twice the speed of the wyvern. In 2 hours, the dragon is 20 miles ahead of the wyvern. Find the flight speed of the dragon, factoring in that the wyvern is bent on revenge. Revenge? Cal goggled at the page, then flipped it. The next question was no better. 2. Lucreta is preparing to plant a crop of deadly nightshade this autumn. She will plant 4 patches of common nightshade with 15 plants in each patch. She estimates that 20% of the field will be planted with a test crop of woody nightshade. How many nightshade plants are there in all? How many woody nightshade plants were planted? If Lucretia is an earth mage who has crossed free of the gates, how many people can she poison with the deadly nightshade before she is caught and beheaded? Cal blinked up the test. Did he have to actually put effort into figuring out which answers were wrong, so that he didn't accidentally get them right? Should he just put down the same thing over and over, figuring that had to get a low score? By the law of averages, he'd still get about 20% right, and that was higher than he wanted. As he furiously pondered what to do, he picked up the pen, shook it, and tried to mark the paper. It didn't work. He tried again, pressing harder. Still nothing. He looked around and it seemed that most of the other kids were writing fine, although a few were struggling with their pens too. He figured that he wasn't going to fail the test like a normal, non-magical person. He wasn't even going to be able to take it. But what if the mages made you take the test over again if you left it blank? Wasn't that like refusing to show up in the first place? Scowling, he tried to remember what Milagros had said about the pen. Something about shaking it to get the ink to work. Maybe he just hadn't shaken it enough? He tightened his fist around the pen and shook it hard, his annoyance at the test putting extra force into the snap of his wrist. Come on, he thought. Come on, you stupid thing, work! The blue ink exploded from the tip of the pen. He tried to stop the flow, pressing his finger against where he thought the crack might be, but that just made the ink shoot harder. It splattered against the back of the chair in front of him. The blonde boy, sensing the inky storm that had just been unleashed, ducked to get out of the range of the mess. More ink than seemed possible to come from such a small pen was splurting all over the place, and people were starting to glare at him. Cal dropped the pen, which immediately stopped spraying, but the damage was done. His hands and desk, his test book, and hair were covered in ink. He tried to wipe it off his fingers, only succeeding in leaving blue handprints all over his shirt. He hoped the ink wasn't poisonous. He was pretty sure he'd swallow some. He swallowed some. Everyone in class was staring. Even Master Milligros was watching him with what looked alarmingly like amazement, as though no one had ever managed to destroy a pen so thoroughly. Everyone was silent except the lanky kid who had been talking to Tamara before. He had leaned over to whisper to her again. Tamara didn't crack a smile, but from the smirk on the boy's face and the superior glint in her eyes, Cal could tell they were sneering at him. He felt the tips of his ears pinking. "Callum Hunt," said Master Milligros in a shocked voice. Please leave the room and clean yourself up. Then wait in the hallway until the group rejoins you." Cal staggered to his feet, barely registering that the blond boy who'd almost been soaked with ink threw him what looked like a sympathetic smile. He could still hear someone giggling as he banged out through the door, and still pictured Tamara's scornful look. Who cared what she thought? Who cared what any of them thought? Whether they're trying to be friendly or mean or not. They didn't matter. They weren't a part of his life. None of this was. Just a few more hours. Just a few more hours, he repeated to himself over and over as he stood in the bathroom, doing his best to scrub off the ink with powdered soap and rough paper towels. He wondered if the ink was magical. It sure wanted to stick. Some of it had dried in his black hair, and there were still dark blue handprints on his white shirt when he emerged. I thought his shirt was gray. That's not important. His shirt color doesn't matter. Yeah. His white shirt when he emerged from the bathroom and found the other aspirants waiting for him in the hallway. He heard some of them muttering to one another about the freak with the ink. Nice look with the shirt, the boy with the black hair said. He looked rich to Cal, rich like Tamara. He couldn't have said why exactly, but his clothes were the kind of tailored, casual fancy that cost a lot of money. For your sake, I hope the next test doesn't involve explosions. Or, oh wait, I hope it does. Shut up, Cal muttered, aware that this was hardly the greatest comeback of all time. He slouched against the wall until Master Milligros, reappearing, called them all to order. Silence fell as she called... What? Gnats are just in my room right now. Yeah. I need to stop getting sidetracked. It's like 3 a.m. and I keep on getting sidetracked. Anyway. God. Yeah. Silence as she called them all to order. Silence fell as she called out names in groups of 5, directing them each down a corridor and telling them to wait at the other end. Cal had no idea how the airplane hangar managed to house such a network of hallways. He suspected it was one of those things his father would say he was better off not thinking about. "Callum Hunt," she called out, and Cal shuffled along to join his group, which also contained, to his dismay, the black-haired boy, whose name turned out to be Jasper D. Winter, and the blonde boy he splattered ink on earlier, who was Aaron Stewart. Love Aaron. Aaron's my favorite. Aaron's great. And Jasper. I like Jasper. Second book. Jasper made a big show of hugging Tamara and wishing her luck before he sauntered off to join his group. Once more, he immediately started talking to Aaron, turning his back on Cal as if Cal didn't exist. The other 2 kids in Cal's group were Kylie Miles and a nervous-looking girl named Celia something, who had a big, massive, dirty blonde hair and who had a big mass of dirty blonde hair and had clipped a blue flower behind her bangs. Celia is always so cute. I love her descriptions. "Hey, Kylie," Cal said, thinking now was the perfect opportunity to warn her that the picture of the magisterium that Master Milagros was conjuring for them was merely a flattering illusion. He had it on good authority that the real caves were full of dead ends and eyeless fish. She looked apologetic. "Would you mind not talking to me?" "What?" They had started moving down the hall, and Cal limped faster to keep up. "Seriously?" She shrugged. "You know how it is. I'm trying to make a good impression, and talking to you isn't going to help. Sorry." She skipped ahead, catching up with Jasper and Aaron. Cal stared at the back of her head as if he could drill into it with anger. "I hope the eyeless fish eat you," he called after her. She pretended not to hear. Master Milagros led them around the last corner into a huge room that was set up like a gymnasium. There was a high ceiling, and from the center of it dangled a big red ball, suspended high over their heads. Next to the ball was a long rope ladder with wooden rungs that reached from the roof to brush the floor. This was ridiculous. He couldn't climb with his leg the way it was. He was supposed to be throwing these tests on purpose, not being so terrible at them that he'd never been able to get into magic school in the first place. "I will now leave you to Master Rockmaple," Master Milagros said after the last group of 5 had arrived, indicating a short magician with a bristling red beard and a ruddy nose. He was carrying a clipboard and had a whistle around his neck, like a gym teacher, although he was wearing the all-black outfit the other magicians were in. "This test is deceptively simple," said Master Rockmaple, stroking his beard in a way that seemed calculated to look menacing. "Simply climb the rope ladder and get the ball. Who would like to go first?" Several kids shot up their hands. Master Rockmaple pointed to Jasper. He bound up to the rope as though being selected first were some kind of indication of how awesome he was, instead of just a measure of how eagerly he waggled his hand. Instead of climbing right on, he circled the apparatus, looking up at the ball thoughtfully, tapping his lower lip. "Are you quite ready?" Master Rockmaple asked, eyebrows raised just slightly, and few other kids snickered. Jasper, clearly annoyed at being laughed at when he was taking the whole thing so seriously, launched himself violently at the dangling rope ladder. As soon as he climbed from one rung to another, the ladder seemed to lengthen, so that the more he climbed, the more he had to climb. Finally, it got the better of him, and he toppled to the ground, surrounded by coils and coils of rope and steps of wood. Now that was funny, Callum thought. "Very good," said Master Rockmaple. "Who would like to go next?" "Let me try again," said Jasper, a whine creeping into his... I didn't read that right. "Let me try again." I love how much of a whiny-ass bitch he is in all these books, said Jasper, a whine creeping into his voice. "I know how to do it now." "We have other aspirants waiting for their turn," Master Rockmaple said, looking as if he was enjoying himself. "But it's not fair. Someone will get it right and then everyone will know how to do it. I'm being punished for going first." It looked to me like you wanted to go first. But very well, Jasper. If there's time after everyone else is done, you'd still like to try again, you may. It just figured that Jasper would get another chance. Cal assumed that from the way he was acting, his dad was probably somebody important. Most of the other kids didn't do any better, some making it halfway up and then sliding back down, one never even hauling himself off the ground. Celia got the farthest before losing her grip and falling onto a practice mat. Her flower hair clip wound up a little mangled. Although she didn't want to show she was upset, Cal could tell she was by the way she kept anxiously trying to fix the clip back into place. Master Rockmable looked at his list. Aaron Stewart. Aaron stood in front of the rope ladder, flexing his fingers like he was about to jog onto a basketball court. He looked sporty and confident, and Cal felt that familiar ache of jealousy in his stomach, quickly smothered, that he got whatever. That familiar ache of jealousy in his stomach, quickly smothered, that he got whenever he watched kids play basketball or baseball and be totally at home in their skin. Team sports weren't an option for Cal. The opportunity for embarrassment was too great, even if he'd been allowed to play. Guys like Aaron never had to worry about things like that. Aaron jogged toward the rope ladder and flung himself onto it. He climbed fast, his feet pushing as his arms pulled him upward in what looked like a single fluid motion. He was moving so quickly that it seemed that he was going faster than the rope was falling. Higher and higher he went. Callum held his breath and realized that all around him, everyone else had grown hushed too. Aaron, grinning like a maniac, reached the top. That's my boy. I love my boy. I love him. He hit the ball with the side of one hand, knocking it free, before slithering back down the rope and landing on his feet like a gymnast. Some of the other kids burst into spontaneous applause. Even Jasper seemed happy for him, going over to clap him grudgingly on the back. "Very good," Master Rockmable said, using exactly the same words and tone he used with everyone else. Callum thought the grumpy old mage was probably just annoyed that someone had beaten his stupid test. "Callum Hunt," he said next. Callum stepped forward, wishing he'd thought to bring a doctor's note. "I can't." Master Rockmable looked him over. "Why not?" "Oh, come on! Look at me! Just look at me!" Cal raised his head and stared defiantly at the mage. "My leg. I'm not supposed to do gym stuff," he said. The mage shrugged. "So don't." And I'm going to stop right there because my phone is shitty and does not have enough storage for this. Tomorrow, I will have to read. As this is in two parts this time. Sorry about that. Yeah. Bye-bye. I'm going to chug water now.